The core of the machine tending solution is composed of one button activator, one Robotiq controller, one pneumatic panel, one air nozzle, 3 stack light monitoring sensors. Depending on your application, you can purchase the Robotiq machine tending solution with no gripper, with a single gripper, or with a double gripper. The following components are available as optional to your Robotiq machine tending solution. Correctly positioning the robot is fundamental to the functioning of the machine tending solution. The final location can be calculated by measuring the distances from the key points to the possible locations of the solution. The distances from the center of the robot to each key point should be within the values shown in the table below. Note, the minimum distance must be respected so the robot does not try to go through itself and has enough space to properly move all its joints. The maximum distance must be respected, as it is the maximal reach of the robot. Test various locations to verify the minimal and maximal distances. Go through all the key waypoints of your process, such as in-feed zone, work holding, opened door, closed door, out-feed zone, any other necessary key point. Note, the robot can be installed at different angles. If you choose an angle configuration, the distances are the same, but must be calculated considering the angle. Determine the height of the robot according to your work environment. For optimal results, the second joint of the robot should be aligned vertically with your work holding device. Identify the location where the Robotiq controller will be installed. It should be positioned so electrical cables will not encumber the working environment. There are 2 options to install the Robotiq controller: with the double-face tape already applied under the controller, or with brackets. Warning: the double-face tape is really hard to remove once installed. Be certain of the Robotiq controller location before installing it. To install the Robotiq controller with the brackets and screws, follow the steps below. Using the 4 Phillips head screws and a Phillips screwdriver number 2, install the 4 brackets at the 4 corners under the Robotiq controller. Using the 4 M5 screws, the 4 M5 nuts, the 8mm wrench to hold the nuts, and the 4mm hex key, install the Robotiq controller at its final location. Earth screw connection. Using the 2mm hex key, remove the protective earth screw on the Robotiq controller. Insert the screw in one end of the protective earth cable, protective earth ring terminal, and, using the 2mm hex key, put the screw back in place. Connect the other end of the protective earth cable inside the robot controller to the screw marked with earth symbols, protective earth for application. The M6 nut for the screw connection on the robot side is in the provided kit. Connect the power cable in the power input of the Robotiq controller. Then connect the wires at the other end of the power cable to available digital I/O terminal blocks in the robot controller. The brown wire in the 24-volt input, the blue or black wire in the 0-volt input. Connect one end of the Ethernet cable in the Robotiq controller. Connect the other end of the Ethernet cable in the provided USB Ethernet adapter. Then connect the USB connector to a USB port in the robot controller. The incoming air supply must deliver a minimal debit of 300 liters per minute and a pressure of 6 to 8 bar, or 87 to 116 psi. We recommend using a local pressure regulator with a filter and air dryer. The standard solution comes with a single solenoid valve that feeds the button activator and the air nozzle. If you ordered the foot switch activator, additional components are included but are not assembled to the pneumatic panel. Identify the location where the pneumatic panel will be installed. Keep in mind the length of the air tubes. 5 meters long for the button activator, 8 meters long for the air nozzle, 5 meters long for the foot switch activator, which is optional. Using the 4 M6 screws, the 4 M6 nuts, the 4 12.7 millimeter plastic spacers, the 10 millimeter wrench to hold the nuts, and the 4 millimeter hex key, install the pneumatic panel at its final location. The nuts are installed behind the surface where the pneumatic panel is installed. The plastic spacers are installed between the pneumatic panel and the surface where it is installed. Install the provided thread adapter and connect the air supply. Open the shutoff valve. Connect the solenoid valve cables from 2 to 4 depending on your scope of delivery. Connect the male ends to the Robotiq controller. Position the robot arm as shown here. Mount the coupling on the robot arm, using the coupling dowel pin to align the parts. Then, fasten the coupling with the 4 millimeter hex key, the 4 M6 screws, and the 4 M6 washers. Secure the gripper to the coupling using the 4 M5 screws, the 4 M5 washers, and the 4 millimeter hex key. Connect the coupling cable. Install the connection protector using the 2 M4 screws and the 3 millimeter hex key. Position the robot arm as shown here. When installing multiple grippers on a robot, every gripper must have its own coupling. The installation with both brackets is the same. Using the dowel pins to align parts, mount the chosen bracket on the tool flange, or the tool plate, if you use the dual bracket with the wrist camera. With the 4 millimeter hex key, fasten the bracket using the 4 M6 screws and the 4 M6 washers. Mount both gripper couplings on the bracket using the dowel pins to align parts. With the 4 millimeter hex key, fasten the bracket using the 4 M6 screws and the 4 M6 washers for each coupling. Install the M8 splitter and, with the 3 millimeter hex key, fasten it to the bracket with 2 M4 screws and the 2 M4 washers. Make sure the splitter is fastened on the side of the dual bracket that receives the dowel pin. Connect the M8 splitter to the robot tool connector. Mount both grippers on the couplings and, with the 4 millimeter hex key, fasten them using the 4 M5 screws and the 4 M5 washers for each coupling. Install the adjustable fingertip holders. Align the 2 holes of a stop with the 2 holes on the side of the fingertip. Tighten the stop with 2 M5 screws and the 4 millimeter hex key. Repeat for the other fingertip. Install the fingertips on the extremities of the holders. Align the 2 dowel pins under the fingertips with the 2 dowel pin holes in the holders. With the 4mm hex key, insert 2 M5 screws in the fingertips, 1 screw per fingertip. Choose the location of the air nozzle. It can be installed on either side of the grippers or on either side of the bracket. Choose the orientation of the air nozzle, straight or 90 degrees. If the straight orientation is selected, remove the 90-degree coupling and the air nozzle, and then reinstall only the air nozzle. Install the air nozzle assembly and tighten it using the 2 M4 screws and the 3mm hex key. Connect the 8mm air tube to the air nozzle and push it until it cannot go further. Ensure the safety clip is properly installed. Cut the 8mm air tube to the right length and connect the other end to the pneumatic panel to the 8mm fitting on the pressure valve. Push it until it cannot go further. Mount one of the sensors on a status light. Wrap the cable tie around the sensor. Position it in the groove. Tighten the cable tie. Optionally, if your working environment is very bright or directly exposed to sunlight, you can install the sensor covers to block a part of the light. Repeat for the other status lights. And cut off the excess. Connect 3 M8 cable extensions. Connect the female ends to the sensors and tighten the rings. Connect the male ends to the Robotiq controller and tighten the rings. For each sensor, adjust the indicator lights. Operate the machine so the stack light is turned on. Using the terminal block screwdriver, turn the sensitivity adjuster until the indicator light turns on. Turn clockwise to increase the detection threshold value. Turn counterclockwise to reduce it. Test the sensor. Each button activator is installed on the control panel with a L or U-shaped bracket and double-face tape. Choose the shape of the bracket according to the following points. If both brackets can fit, select the U-shaped bracket as it frames the button better. If the L-shaped bracket must be used, position the button activator, when possible, in the corner of the L. Don't forget to consider the air tube that will come out of the button activator. Whether it's L or U-shaped, the bracket should be opened at the bottom so that dust and other particles do not accumulate under the button activators. Without applying the double-face tape now, make some tests to identify the position of the bracket. The button activator must be centered over the start button. Position the bracket accordingly. Warning: the double-face tape is really hard to remove once installed. Be careful when applying it. Wait 24 hours after application before using the button activator. Using the 2 M3 screws, the 2 M3 washers, and the 2mm hex key, install the button activator on the selected holes of the bracket. The washers have a conic form. The larger surface should rest on the button activator feet, while the screws should rest on the smaller surface. Warning: do not over-tighten the screws, as it would strip them. Stop as soon as the screws block. At rest, the button activator cylinder should barely touch the start button. To modify the height, adjust the slide rail until the cylinder is in a range of 1 millimeter from the start button. Test manually the button activator to see if it does activate the machine. Once the button activator is installed, the cycle start icon should display horizontally. If the orientation of the button activator causes the icon to display vertically, apply the provided cycle start sticker horizontally on the existing one. Connect the 4 mm air tube to the button activator. Push it until it cannot go further. Then ensure the safety clip is properly installed. Cut the 4 mm air tube to the right length and connect the other end to the pneumatic panel. To the 4 mm fitting just inside the button activator pressure regulator. Push it until it cannot go further. On the pneumatic panel, slowly turn up the button activator pressure until the activator button is pushed to the bottom. Add another bar to the button activator pressure regulator, then lock the pressure. Warning: before working on the foot switch, it must be first turned off and de-energized. Assemble the additional components of the pneumatic panel. Disconnect at both ends the air tube connecting the pressure regulator fitting and the solenoid valve. Then discard it. Using the 17 mm wrench, remove the single air tube fitting from the pressure regulator. Then install the Y air tube fitting. Using the 2 mm hex key and the 5.5 mm wrench, remove the two M3 screws from the solenoid valve. Do not disconnect the solenoid valve cables, but be careful when handling them. Superimpose the additional solenoid valve on the other one. The additional solenoid valve has only one cable. Make sure that the cable goes left. Insert the two 40 mm M3 screws in both solenoid valves. Then, using the 2 mm hex key, the 5.5 mm wrench, and the two M3 nuts, install the solenoid valves on the pneumatic panel. Connect the two new 8 mm air tubes to the Y fitting and to the solenoid valves. Push the air tubes until they cannot go further. Insert the additional solenoid valve cable in one of the available holes at the bottom of the pneumatic panel. There are 3 adjustment plates, each of a different thickness. Choose the one that fits with your foot switch. With the two M5 by 10 mm low head cap screws and the 4 mm hex key, install the chosen adjustment plate under the foot switch activator. Do not tighten the screws as the plate still needs to be adjusted. Do not install the third screw yet. Put the edge of your foot switch on the adjustment plate. Turn the assembly on its side and adjust the position of your foot switch until it touches the foot switch activator. This will avoid movement in the assembly. Align the hole on the edge of your foot switch with the third hole on the adjustment plate. Then, with the 4 mm hex key, tighten the two M5 by 10 mm low head cap screws already in place. Put the assembly back straight. Insert the washer in the chosen M5 socket head cap screw and, using the 4 mm hex key, tighten the screw in the hole going through your foot switch and the adjustment plate. Test the assembly manually to make sure everything works fine. Then put the cover of your foot switch back. Connect the 6 mm air tube to the foot switch activator. Push it until it cannot go further. Then ensure the safety clip is properly installed. Cut the 6 mm air tube to the right length and connect the other end to the pneumatic panel to the 6 mm fitting on the additional pressure valve. Reconnect your foot switch.